You're now locked into Zone 32.
Grant Durflinger, Jake Miller.
Only on NeutralZoneInfractions.com.
NZI Properties.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Zone 32 podcast, presented to you as always by NZI Properties. Follow us on Twitter at NZI Properties. My name is Jake. His name is Grant. Maximus will be back soon. He's fought off that shit that was keeping him down. Anyway, say what's up to the people, Grant.
What up, what up, what up? And Max is on the final level.
He's almost there. He's almost there. That fucking bear couldn't keep his ass down. We miss you, dog. Get back soon. Anyway, football season's almost over. That's some bullshit. We got the AFC and the NFC championship games to preview tonight. We'll get into a little bit of off-season talk towards the end. But anywho, let's jump into it. The first game at about 3:05 Eastern Standard Time, 12:05 Pacific on Fox. You got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling up to the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field to take on the Green Bay Packers. Quick little bit of note, it's going to be 12 degrees up there come game time. So Grant, I'm going to start with you. Who's going to the Super Bowl out of the NFC?
Mother Nature. That tundra is a whole different world. You know, it's different. Like the surface, you know, you got to get your cleats right. You got to, you know, I mean, I know that they have coils under the stadium and everything, but that shit don't do it justice. You know, I think it's going to be a really good matchup. You know, you're getting the highlight of the two quarterbacks. You know, you got Aaron Rodgers going against Tom Brady, which you see everything, but I think there's a lot more that's going to go into that game than actually the two quarterbacks. I look forward to a really good matchup on the NFC side. You know, feel bad for Drew Brees and everything losing. You know, somebody had to come out on top. So if he does decide to retire, you know, kudos to him. You know, he's one of the greats, if arguably, you know, one of the greatest, or if not the greatest, in some people's eyes. You know, if you look at stats or if you look at wins, you look at rings, you know, you have three greatest. But, you know, I think that it's going to be tough for the Bucs to come in there. You know, the Packers are hot right now. They're playing with a lot of confidence. Defense has been playing a lot better for them too. You know, we saw last week when the Rams came in, you know, the Rams do have that, they didn't have Cooper Kupp, but they do have that ability on offense to, you know, rack points and got a really good run game, which run game is essentially one of the knocks on the Packers defense. Jair Alexander, you know, I think we talked about him a couple weeks ago. You know, he's playing out of his mind as, you know, per usual. You know, I really like his game a lot. I think he's, you know, got the ability to probably neutralize Mike Evans. I can probably kind of see them matching those two up because Jair's more of like a long corner, physical, likes to get in your face. Those are usually the ones that kind of tend to give Mike Evans problems and they get in his head a little bit. He's definitely one that if he gets in his head, his psyche switches a little bit. So I think that, you know, that's going to be a key matchup to kind of watch. You know, we're going to have to see what's going on with, you know, what they can generate a pass rush, you know, with this, as you mentioned, called them before, the Smith brothers. You know, Rashard Gary's been really coming on late, you know, kind of providing that additional pass rush factor to, you know, take some pressure off of, you know, one of those two, depending on what the scheme is for that specific play. But, you know, it's definitely going to be something to watch. I think it's going to be a really close game. I could see it being a high scoring game. I think the over on the first half was like 12.5 for the Bucs, 13, or I mean, not the over, but the points were like 12.5 for the Bucs, 13.5 for the Packers after the first half. I think that's an easy bet. I see both teams kind of come out gunning. It is going to come down to the defensive side of the ball. So I think it's really going to come down to, you know, which defense is going to kind of hold that, you know, who's going to get off the field on those third downs. You know, I could see, you know, a big time turnover. Don't know which team, but I feel like there's going to be a defensive or special team score. They're saying that AB is not going to play. You know, he's having that knee issue, but I think that's going to give opportunity for Tyler Johnson, who I'm a huge fan of. Loved him in the draft process. You know, I thought he was a steal. We saw a flash of him earlier in the season. I think Godwin was out, and that was before the AB time. It was a Monday night game, I believe. It was the week that everybody started Scotty Miller in fantasy and FanDuel and all that and DFS, and he goose-egged everybody. But Tyler Johnson's that guy. He's electric. He runs great routes. He gets in and out his breaks fast. He can manipulate the defense in the secondary. For a young guy, I mean, he's got potential, and he's got that ability to kind of step in. You're missing a big key part of the offense the past couple of weeks with AB being out, but I think Tyler Johnson can fill that void. I'm not saying he is AB, but I'm saying he can fill that void within the offense and, create plays, create mismatches, take pressure off when it needs there. Run game's going to be kind of interesting. We got playoff Lenny in the belt. But Aaron Jones, he's had a phenomenal past 2 seasons, and Bucks run defense is really stout. So that's kind of one of the matchups that I'm going to be really looking at. But to get into like my picks for the weekend, I'm taking Packers over the Bucks. I got it 37-31. My X factor is going to be Zadarius Smith. We talked about him a little bit before the pod, ex-Raven. But I think that this is a game where he can really, continue onto his greatness that he's really built on the past 2 seasons. And, this game is going to be who's going to get to the quarterback. And I think he's the guy. He's the guy that's going to have to get there. He's going to have to win his matchups. They're going to try to cheat Chip. They're going to try to get extra bodies in his way. But I think that he's savvy enough, and he's a great pass rusher. He can, set that edge. They like to run between the tackles a lot, so I'm not really, too necessarily worried about him, in the run game as much. But he can do it if he needs to. But yeah, that's what I'm going with, man. I'm going with A-Rod. Lazard's going to put the crown on him. He's going to hit the belt. I do need him to get a rushing touchdown for my parlay. I need an Aaron Rodgers rushing touchdown. Let's get it.
Go back to what you said about Zadarius Smith, the one who got away. It's a good X factor. I like the pick, and it's understandable. It's going to be 12 fucking degrees at Lambeau Field. The warm weather teams going up north to play in the frozen tundra, they generally don't do so hot in that kind of scenario. But that being said, hell with that. I'm taking the Bucks. Give me Tampa Bay. Tom Brady. Hey, hey, Tampa Bay. That corny ass 80s song from the Bucks back in the day with Doug Williams, and I forget the coach's name, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The Creamsicle Bucks.
Hey, that was the Great Value Bears shuffle.
That it was. But you know what? I'm taking Tampa Bay in this game. Why am I taking Tampa Bay in this game? Because at some point, I think it's going to come down to the running game. Because Tampa, you ain't going to be able to run the ball against them. They give up the fewest yards per carry. They've given up the fewest touchdowns on the ground this year. They've given up the fewest rushing yards total this year. Their front seven is elite. Their back end leaves a bit to be desired. So the worry is, again, covering with the uncoverable Devontae Adams. He's been torching everybody. So you got to put 2 or 3 on him at least to put him away. So then from there, it becomes, can Allen Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling get open for Rodgers and make plays so they can win the game? That'll be the key. I'm banking on them not doing that. Why? Because of the injuries along the Packers offensive line. Don't forget, David Bakhtiari's out for the year. And you got Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaquille Barrett coming to town. So all things considered, give me the Bucks in that. Yeah, AB's out. But like you said, Tyler Johnson can play. Every time he's taken the field, he's made a play, especially in the red zone. They like him a lot there. Honestly, next year, say if the Bucks let Godwin and AB both go, I like Tyler Johnson in fantasy as a receiver too. Yeah. Like maybe not as your receiver too, but as a reserve who could make something happen out of Mike Evans getting double covered. Give me that.
I mean, I might be exaggerating too, but I mean, you're talking about a guy that probably gets 8 to 10 snaps a game as far as pass plays. Where he's going out running routes, and I'll bet you he makes a play on 2 or 3 of them. So I mean, even if you're looking at 10, 30% of the plays that he's involved in, he's making a play. So I think that's a lot to take in too. But yeah, I'm with you, man. Next year, depending on what they do in free agency, I could see as long as Tom Brady's there, he loves AB. I don't really see him, especially he's kept his nose clean. He's he's so far been a solid teammate. Unless shit's happened, they just haven't let it out. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I think Tyler Johnson is going to be definitely a sleeper.
Absolutely. But back to the point of what I was talking about with the game, I have more faith in Rojo and Leonard Fournette getting off against that Packers front seven than I do Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, and Jamal Williams getting off against that Bucks front seven. Rodgers will have to sling it, and he definitely can. But that being said, you can't do a whole lot of slinging if you're on your back. So I'm banking on that Bucks front seven getting the job done. My X factor is JPP because whoever is I don't even know who's replacing Bakhtiari. I forget that backup. But either way, you got a reserve left tackle blocking arguably the more productive of the two between he and Barrett this year. So all things considered, give me Tampa Bay. I'm going 31-28. Give me 31-28. And Ryan stuck up kicking the game-winning field goal to send him to the Super Bowl. But anyway, that's my thought. Now let's move on to the AFC Championship game, where those Buffalo Bills, who this is their first conference championship game since I want to say 1993 or 94. I want to say they took on Kansas City in that game as well, but I could be wrong. But either way, this is the first time they've been back to this point in the playoffs since the Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed years. So they're heading off to Arrowhead to take on the Kansas City Chiefs, who have made their third conference championship game appearance in 3 years. So, Grant, who wins? Who's representing the AFC in the Super Bowl?
Well, it's gonna be they've already kind of seen each other a little bit. Both teams, it's gonna be a gunslinger matchup. We saw what the Bills did last week as far as the run game goes. I don't really see them coming out and being kind of that negligent to the run game this week, just because they did it last week. Only NFL offense that's that predictable is Greg Roman's offense, but they want to get it on the outside. They want to get the ball in their playmakers' hands in space. It's cliche, but that's what they want to do, both teams. I really like what the Chiefs have been doing with Tyreek Hill. It's kind of what I've been saying this whole time, like what Hollywood Brown's strength would be and why we don't have it in pretty much every single pass tree concept that for each play. Is they got him in the slot and he's basically running, those kind of choice routes. He's running, quick outs. He's running quick slants, seam routes. He's running what was it called? What was the play they ran? Wasp. They run Wasp where he can run a corner. I mean, he wasn't the slot on that, but long story short, but they always send him on a crossing route if he's not on a designated, but majority of the time he's running a crossing route from the slot, which how do you defend somebody that fast and that much of a playmaker in the slot when they're just going to hit a cross right away, whether it's a short, intermediate, or a deep cross? So, they just getting the ball in his hand and letting him rock. And that's what smart offenses do. They don't try to oversimplify it too much, but they still throw in the concepts of I'm going to find ways to get the ball into my players' hands in space. They're not throwing really quick hooks into triple coverage. They're not throwing 10-yard stop routes on the outside, in a cover 3. Like it's just like, I think that it's going to come down to both quarterbacks essentially, obviously. Does Mahomes really take gambles this game? Does he try to run a little bit more? Does he try to scramble? We all know how concussions are. Once you get one, they kind of grow. It's easier to get the next one each time that you get one. I'm sure he's had many in his life, but with it being so frequent, and if you may be honest with you, he probably isn't cleared, but I'll be damned if they're going to A, postpone the game because the quarterback's out from a concussion, one guy, or B, let the championship game happen, period, without him. So, they're probably bringing him back too soon, but hey, I'm not the doctor. But he could take one wrong pop and that's it. But, I'm really interested in looking at the matchup. Matt Milano did really good on Mark Andrews. You talked about it last week, 4 catches on 11 targets. I'm interested to see, he's been really good in pass defense this year. And he wasn't in the game the first time that they played. So we didn't really get to see what he could do. And I think Travis Kelce had a pretty big game that game too. But what they're trying to do is their focal point is the middle of that defense, and they're trying to work off of Kelce to work to their outside receivers and get the ball to those players in space. So, they're really smart with how they do that. They're pre-snap motions. Like Andy Reid's a genius with getting defenses to show what they're going to do before they actually do it. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see how those two kind of match up. That's not my X factor at all, but you know what I'm doing? I'm going with the boys up north. I'm picking the Bills for the upset. Give me all the wings. Send them to me. I love buffalo wings. Don't care if they're drums. I don't care if they're flats. It does not matter. I'm going with the Bills. And the only reason is because they have something special going on right now. And, I've said the past couple of weeks, maybe they shouldn't be in this position because they should have lost the Colts, should have, could have, would have. Baltimore completely outplayed them. They snuck out of that one because of Baltimore shooting themselves in the foot. But it's any given Sunday, and that game against Baltimore gave them that other level of confidence because not only did they get their first win, but in 25 years, but holy shit, they got 2 playoff wins, and now they're passing the divisional round, going for a chance to get back to the Super Bowl, which is a demon that they cannot conquer. So we've seen all the jokes with the Bills not being able to finish in that. They want to put all that to rest. So I think that's what's going to be firing off on them a lot, and it's going to be interesting to see how they come out. I don't think they're going to try to do too much, but I think they're going to try to control the game. And we always talk about controlling the line of scrimmage, control the clock, time of possession, keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. They can do that. They can extend those drives. They're a passing team, but also in the retrospect, Chiefs can do the same. So defenses are going to come up big here too. So with that being said, I'm taking the Bills over the Chiefs, 34-33. My X factor is going to be the Bills secondary. I could single in on the obvious of Tre'Davious White. Jordan Poyer's been playing really well, but I think it's going to take everybody as a whole. They don't really have the secondary. It's going to follow somebody. I think with Tre'Davious and with the weapons that you have in the Chiefs offense, you don't need to trail. The way that they run their routes and concepts, you don't need to run man. Man is where they kill you. Maybe like if you run man under or 2 under. So, that might be a situation that you might be looking at that they might follow or trail somebody. But at the end of the day, it's going to come up to them, who's going to stop this high-powered offense. Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback, but he's got an embarrassment of riches with, you got Kelsey, you got Demarcus Robinson, Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Le'Veon Bell has been formidable in that offense. Damian Williams is back healthy. He's their power guy. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm not sure if he's playing or not, but I haven't seen that he's out. And, I think that it's hard to stop that team. So my X factor is going to have to be the Bills secondary in order for them to win that game and go to the Super Bowl to face off against A-Rod.
I see you. I love the upset pick, but I'm not as ballsy as you in that regard. I'm taking the Kansas City Chiefs. Why am I taking the Kansas City Chiefs? Couple reasons. One, there's a chance to go back to that Nature Boy Ric Flair quote that I love to throw out there. To be the man, woo! You gotta beat the man. And earlier this year at Buffalo on a Monday afternoon or Monday evening, actually, Clyde Edwards-Helaire came into the game and had 26 carries for $165 on the ground against that Bills defense. You can run on them, and Kansas City added Le'Veon Bell since then. So if anything, yes, they'll be back to stop Patrick Mahomes. Yes, they'll play a little more safe and rely on Jerry Hughes and Ed Oliver and Mario Addison to get after Mahomes. Do I think they're going to be able to? Not really. Just because I think the ground game and the fact that they're going to be trying to stop Mahomes and make him make elongated drives to score, I think that bodes well for that running game. They can when they need to. They're not a power running team or they're not a strong running team by any stretch of the imagination, but they can get it done when they need to. They proved it when they played earlier this year. I think they get it done again because of that. Not to mention, Buffalo doesn't have that. Devin Singletary is not a featured back. He's not a bad player. Nice little jitterbug with no breakaway speed, but their running game is Josh Allen entirely, and Chiefs get to practice that against someone who can get outside the pocket every single day, and arguably the best quarterback in the league in Patrick Mahomes. So they should be able to hone in on slowing down the Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs connection just because of the way they play and the cover 2 scheme that they ran against them earlier in the season, week 6. Baltimore obviously saw that on film and held that Bills offense to a measly 10 points. Baltimore's defense is better than Kansas City's. Scheme-wise, Kansas City has the players within that scheme to give Josh Allen and the Bills a difficult day. Do I think they'll hold them to 10? Absolutely not. I think this will be a high-scoring game, but I'm picking the Chiefs to win 38-35. Let's go overtime, too. Why not? Make it a little dramatic. That's what I'm saying. Anywho, those are our picks for the conference championship games.
For the first time it's only 2 games, but we didn't agree on any picks. So here we go.
Here we go. Who's going to be right this week? I'm going Red Bull. He's going tailgate bowl, because from what I've been told, the Bills and the Packers are arguably the two best tailgates in the NFL. I wouldn't know. I'll have to tell you if I ever go to Lambeau or to Orchard Park. But anyway, let's do a little bit of speculation in the offseason. The Lions have hired a new coach in Dan Campbell, former tight end coach and assistant to Sean Payton in the New Orleans Saints. Today, they announced their hiring of Anthony Lynn to be their offensive coordinator. Shortly after that, Adam Schefter came out with a report saying both the Lions and Matthew Stafford are agreeing to mutually part ways this offseason. He hasn't been released, but they're currently looking for a trade partner. So, Grant, what are your top 3 destinations for Matt Stafford to go to this offseason?
Well, first of all, I feel great for Matt Stafford. He's gotten out of the hellhole that he's been in since he's been in the league. That dude's been nothing but a consummate pro. Plays hurt. He's the ultimate teammate. I think you hear players of other teams praise him more than players on his own team. I don't know how many times they talk about how, elite that dude is, but he's just in a bad spot. And it sucks because it's like you wasted this guy's, not his whole career, but a huge part of his career. And they did Megatron dirty, so I don't really see why, but the money they gave him, you can't really turn that down. And he was drafted at the point where before they changed the rules on, top draft picks of basically getting paid more than Pro Bowl quarterbacks when they first come in the year. So he got a fat contract right out. I think he got the biggest one. It was either him or Sam Bradford that before they changed it, they got like the biggest contracts. It was like 40 or 50 mil or some shit. But I think that he hasn't complained. He's done what he's done. I shared earlier that video of, when he got hurt, fucking like broke his collarbone basically, and then came back in and threw the touchdown pass to win the game. You could tell like he wasn't faking it. That dude was in some serious ass pain. If I see that and I'm his teammate, dude, I'm running through a brick wall for a guy like that. And call me the Kool-Aid man. But he's just, I feel great for him. I hope he gets in a good situation, a good spot. So to kind of get into that, I put it out earlier on Twitter as well, at rare_ribeye. If you need me, holla. But, a lot of people are talking about the Colts. Makes a ton of sense. Frank Wright there, what they have as far as defense, great defense, great young defense. Skilled players that still have room to grow. They got money to spend. They could bring somebody else in if, he does come there. It'd be a good place for him to kind of finish out. He's not Phillip Rivers. He's not coming in for like a year or two, maybe left in his career. The guy's got a lot of gas in the tank. I forgot I think it was on the Pat McAfee show earlier this year, and they had Aaron Rodgers on, and he was kind of talking about, ridiculous throws or quarterbacks that make ridiculous throws. And they were talking about the no looks that Pat Mahomes does. And, he was kind of joking about that, but he's like, Matt Stafford, verbatim, but he's like, Matt Stafford basically makes throws that he does that every week. And you don't see that because the NFL doesn't like hone it. You know what I mean? Like Patrick Mahomes is under a spotlight. That dude takes a shit and they're like, oh my God, that's the greatest shit I've ever seen in my life. He didn't even have to wipe. He pinched it off clean. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like so annoying, but there's so many other better players or people that need more recognition that deserve it. And Matt Stafford's one of those guys. And I think that he's got all the talent in the world. Like I said, but I'd love to see him go in a perfect situation. So Colts, are one of my tops. It's more like 1A, 1B. My favorite spot for him to go is San Fran. I think that makes the most sense to me. Being there with Kyle Shanahan, genius on the offensive side. He likes those guys that get the ball out quick, not afraid to fit the ball into tight spaces based off because they're a movement offense. They don't have their positionless offense. And I really love how they've taken on that mantra. Ravens do that on defense, and they kind of not originated that on defense, but they kind of were like one of the pioneers of like the fluid defense, hybrid players, Adalius Thomas going out at cornerback, like players that don't play in usual positions. And I think that the Niners do that on offense. And I love how they do that on offense because why are you an X receiver? Why can't you be an X, a Z, a Y, an H? Like formations, mismatches, you create situational options. And what he does in San Fran, Matt Stafford would eat. Like with the playmakers they have, with the running game they have, with the blocking scheme that they have. I mean, they could have, a bottom 5 offensive line. They could take the right side of the Ravens offensive line and probably make them Pro Bowlers off of his blocking scheme alone and what they can do within the offensive movement. So my number 1 team is going to be the Niners, number 2, Colts. My number 3 is more of a dark horse, and it's going to be hard for them to get out of what they're in, but it's the Falcons. Bringing in a new guy with Smith there as the head coach, what he did, with the Titans, we talked about it a little bit earlier, he likes to get the ball out. He likes to get the ball down the field. He's got guys there and, Calvin Ridley, Hayden Hurst, Julio Jones. They need a running back, but, when you have that much on the outside, you could pretty much just probably draft a guy or get a veteran off the market and completely be feasible and have, a 700 to 1,000-yard rusher, with what they could do in that offense. So, I think that's a great spot for him. The only problem is Matt Ryan's contract, just signed it in 2018. He's getting ready to enter the 3rd year of that deal. So, him getting out of that deal, I think he's a 23 or 25 million cap hit. I want to say 23, but I think he counts about 40 against the caps. It's not like they can cut him. But, you don't really see player for player trades. You throw some draft picks in there because they are a little bit older, longer in the tooth. I think you can make it work, but, sending Matt Ryan for a fresh start in Detroit, seeing what they could do for him. Maybe he could play out a year or two, buy his contract out, boom, he could opt out of his final year, end up back on the market and get a fresh start in a year or two, depending on what they decide to do with him. But at least you're getting something in return. Like I said, you don't see a lot of player for player deals. It'd be hard to get out of that. But if they could make it work, the Falcons would be a really good spot for him too. But let's go Shanahan, get him to San Fran.
I dig it. And to your point about Matt Ryan, he would also be a good fit in Kyle Shanahan's offense, obviously. That man was a former MVP when Shanahan was coaching the offense in Atlanta. So, if they want to move on from Jimmy G, Matt Stafford wouldn't be the only Matt they should look into this offseason. He can play. Not to mention getting to throw to Kittle, getting to throw to Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, hand off to Raheem Mostert. That'd be a dominant offense. They'd be much better than what they are with good old porn star Jimmy Garoppolo. But anywho, my fits for Matt Stafford are essentially the same, but we'll go 1 to 3. You mentioned the Colts already. I think he'd be excellent there. He's obviously got more zip on the ball than Phillip Rivers does. So you're not going to be sitting there watching little floaters damn near get picked off by DBs that the Colts play against. Not to mention he's got Michael Pittman Jr. to roll with, Jonathan Taylor, and a nice offensive line in front of him. Naheem Hines out the backfield on 3rd down, plus a defense. The Colts might be better than the Titans if they make that kind of a move this particular offseason. I was in on them last year. I was wrong, but that happens. And you gotta always look on the bright side of life when that happens. I agree with you on San Francisco. Same kind of zip, same kind of reasons. Deebo to throw to, Brandon Ayuk to throw to, George Kittle healthy. Say maybe they take Kyle Pitts in the draft. There you got a 2 wide, 2 tight set with a couple with players who are mismatches against damn near everybody they go against. So that'd be a dominant offense with Stafford at the helm. My number 3, I'm going to stay on the West Coast because there were rumblings earlier, I want to say it was this week, maybe last week, that there's a little trouble in paradise in LA between Sean McVay and Jared Goff. So for my 3rd pick, give me the Rams because McVay comes from the same kind of coaching tree as Kyle Shanahan. They both coached under Mike in Washington. McVay stuck around there a little longer, learning the West Coast offense more from Jay Gruden. So he's a great offensive mind. You got the running game there with Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers, but Cam Akers is looking like he's going to have that job come next year with the way he ran this postseason. Still got Robert Woods. Cooper Kupp was newly extended this past offseason. Tyler Higbee's a nice tight end. They really wanted Gerald Everett to take off, and he's an all right player, but Tyler Higbee's the better of the two. But you still got those two. Van Jefferson's coming along. Nice route runner. Made that play last week against the Packers, scoring that touchdown. Josh Reynolds is a nice receiver 3. The cupboard would not be bare if he went to LA. Plus, you got Aaron Donald in the defense. So you not getting sacked by Aaron Donald would be a good thing. Most he could do in practice is maybe give you a hug. But yes, the Rams would be a great fit. My number 1 is the Colts, though. You give them an elite quarterback, they might be the favorites to come out the AFC, even over Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. Maybe I'm crazy, but hey, you never know. That defense played them very well the last time they went up against each other, so I'm not doubting them. I would love to see him in blue and white, not as necessarily as the opposing team, but for their fortunes next year, he'd be a damn good fit, especially with Frank Reich coaching them up. But anywho, I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Zone 32 podcast. We will be back next week to recap what we saw in the conference championship games, along with hitting you with a little bit more news. But anyway, thanks for listening.
See ya!
Grant, Jake,
Zone 32, only on NeutralZoneInfraction.com.
NZI Properties.